Thanks,
Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I'm officially calling this October meeting to order. So happy that you all can join us. I think this is going to be a really good and fun meeting. Cam, I'm going to ask that you kindly take roll call and then invite any public comment, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. So in attendance for the members at this moment, I see Susie Strife, Adam Sanderson, Flo Rotano, and Sergio Cordova. And I'll give it a second for public comment. If anyone has anything to say, please raise your hand.
Yeah, I think we've got a few.
Yep, a lot of people
folks
just logged
connected.
in. Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, we'll just wait for a couple of moments. Thanks for joining, everybody. We are in the middle of roll call and invite public comment at this time. Okay, Cam, should we roll call again and see if we've got friends joining us? Thank you.
As of now at 10:01, we have Susie Strife, Adam Sanderson, Amanda Perkins, Bridger Tomlin, Flo Rotano, Jeff Wong, Lucas Hagan, Melody Mascarenas, Sergio Cordova, Garrett McDaniel. And those are all the members I see at this moment, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you so much, Cam. And welcome, everybody. We're so grateful you can be here. This is going to be a great meeting. Before diving into our official agenda and discussion items, we have just one announcement. So as discussed at our September meeting, the technical committee is changing our meeting format to include just 2 in-person meetings a year rather than quarterly. The rest will take place virtually. So as a reminder, our next meeting is in person on November 4th at the DRCOG offices, and there will be food. So we really hope that you can join us in person. Again, trying to make this really easy with 2 meetings a year in person. So hopefully we can all join then. Moving on to discussion items, we are going to go into the DRCOG decarbonized branding, and I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, morning. Last time I gave these remarks, it was afternoon, so it's morning this time. Forgive me. It's nice to be here with all of you. I'm Chris Selk, Program Manager for Communications for the Decarbonization Program, and I have 2 special guests here this morning, and I think you're really going to be delighted with the presentation that they have for you. I'd like to introduce Camille Zaccardi and Carol Quinn from Karsh-Hagen, whom we brought on to lead the marketing services aspect of our program. Carol and Camille are going to walk through both the process and the strategy that led to the selection of our program name, logo, and color palette, in addition to the direction and the design of our upcoming advertising campaign, which you're going to see a little bit of a sneak peek of at the end of their presentation. So after they're done, please stay tuned for any questions that you might have. We'll be happy to answer those. But with that, I give you Carol and Camille.
Can you guys hear me and see my screen? Perfect. Thank you. As Chris said, I'm Camille Zaccardi. I'm the VP of Strategy at Karsh-Hagen. And joining me is Carol, our Group Accountant Director. And as Chris said, we've been hired as the agency of record and our team of strategic partners to help brand and market DRCOG's new decarbonization program as a part of your federal grant. Hagen, if you aren't familiar with us, has been a Denver creative strategy and media agency in Denver since 1977. And we've had the pleasure to work with a lot of Colorado businesses and government entities across our state. And we're really proud of being able to kind of build and grow and make sure our state stays great. And so this is why we're really excited about the project. So today we're going to share a little bit about our process and progress of our phase 1 work together. So first, what we had to do was kind of look at what was the brand going to be, and most importantly, when we met with Chris and Robert and team, they said we cannot say decarbonization. No one understands what that means, so we have got to have a new name. Because people don't understand it. And more importantly, it doesn't resonate with them. It doesn't talk about the benefits of what this program is going to do. So we'll talk you through a little bit about our process over the last 4 months, share with you our brand positioning, kind of our North Star that we're building the foundation of this program for this year and the next 5 years to build upon. And then Carol's going to walk you through the fun stuff, which is the name and logo, and we'll have some time for Q&A. So when we talk about branding as a marketing agency, marketing is really like the megaphone, but branding is the meaning behind it. So one gets you seen, which we will be doing a lot of come 2026, but the other one keeps people curious long after the campaign ends and really sets the stage for all the future work your team and the program will do over the next 5 years. So at a baseline, what is a brand? Sometimes it's easier to say what it's not. These are all elements of a brand, but singularly, a brand is not a logo. It's not what you sell. It's not what you do. It's not your attributes, and it's not your physical product. It is your identity holistically. It's what you it's what you stand for. It's why you're doing this. We're doing this for our community to be healthier, for lives to be better, to ladder up to the overall DRCOG mission. It's your inspiration and it's your purpose. A product is something you buy, like a heat pump, but our brand is something you buy into, which is comfort, reliability, clean energy, better environment, better communities. So for DRCOG, your brand needs to embody trust. We talked a lot about, DRCOG is such a trusted entity in our state that anything that we were doing for the building decarbonization team really need to ladder up. Like we need to stand for trust, simplicity, Colorado pride. While we're making electrification feel practical and achievable, we can also capitalize on like what other campaigns are doing in the market, but we really need it to be different. Right? So this rising tide that lifts all boats, but our program is different because it is different. So the brand that I'm going to walk you through is kind of keeping all of this stuff in mind. So our process to get there was first and foremost, we have to start with research. Research is such a big part of this, and we brought in a team of experts, Institute for the Built Environment out of CSU, a sustainability expert, and GBSM, who's our PR partners, to kind of really look at community-based organizations, focus groups, primary and secondary research. So I'll go through a little bit of those findings. But we really need to get a baseline of understanding of where people are at and what we're offering and how we can talk to them about that and the benefits of they are. Then that leads directly into our brand strategy, that foundation, that communication grounds, and then visually and verbally, like how does that come to life? So those are sort of the first 3 steps that we're going to kind of walk through over the course of the next 15 minutes. So from a primary research perspective, we had to anchor our process in research that no one else has done, right? So we connected 12 different stakeholder interviews, some of you even on the phone, across all of your partner agencies. We worked with our partners at IBE to do 2 advisory council sessions with community partners and held focus groups with low-income homeowners and surveyed 150 homeowners across the Denver region. We've also talked to workforce, building owners, and contract developers as well. So our key takeaways from this primary research is kind of fourfold here. We needed to be aspirational but accessible. We needed to make sure that any language or any brand that we were going to communicate of like this program, why we were doing it, needed to highlight the efficiency, the health, and the safety and sort of future proofing. But we needed to talk to people with where they're at. We needed to empower them and not tell them you should be doing this. The finger wagging, the very prescriptive, you should do this to save your family, to save the future is not going to work with these groups. We also needed to avoid a lot of jargon, especially in this clean energy space. We already talked about how decarbonization people didn't resonate with, but also we needed to opt for words that, are easy, affordable, smart, like just things that people understand. And this was a really unique insight, is that we needed to be Colorado forward, at least at the onsite as we're building out this program. There is such trust in this community. It's this idea of like, we're for Colorado because we're by Colorado, and there's a lot of buy-in and trust and authenticity that just even goes with that when people feel like this is a Colorado-based program for me. So from a secondary research perspective, we reviewed over 100 national and international studies and 50 electrification campaigns to really make sure that we were grounding and building from what other people are doing, what's been working successfully, but more important, how do we kind of help fill some of those gaps? So from a key takeaways, like top mindset recommendation across all of our audiences, from low income to Denver homeowners, contractors, developers, there's a mindset that unites all of them. And that is this idea that they are pragmatic homeowners. These are households that balance cost, comfort. They're not luxury at any price, nor are they bargain only switchers. They'll act when they see a clear, trusted path to better comfort and healthier air. And even more importantly, if it's backed by rebates and vetted installers, this is like really what they're looking for. So simply, we are grounding kind of our program in this mindset approach of like, we need to reach these pragmatic homeowners because they're most likely to adopt a heat pump. So I'm going to go through a couple different graphs here, but what we heard consistently through all of our primary and secondary research is that people care most about comfort, health, and cost. They want simple upgrades that make their homes healthier, their lives more comfortable, and they want really reliable systems. So this idea of consistent heat and cooling, lower bills, and air quality continue to resonate through every leadership discussion, focus groups, and survey that we had. So from a brand positioning standpoint, with our research kind of set, we really needed to help craft like how we were going to talk about this program and brand in a meaningful way. So I said this before, but we had to really define the North Star. And if we look at positioning, it's really around like, how do we inspire and guide both internal and external stakeholders? You on this call are going to be using these communications in various ways. And how do we kind of have one maypole, one consistent way that we're talking about a very complex program that we can all kind of build from uniquely? So from a very core positioning standpoint, like the clear takeaway is that comfort was king, right? It's what people want: safe, reliable, year-round comfort for their families. And it's the core insight that guided our positioning because it's also what you're offering and what your audience cares about. For contractors and workforce, the same message around comfort and safety also resonated. That was going to be really important to us because those are priority audiences. But for them, it was this idea that they can empower people to deliver upgrades that they can believe in. So workforce and homeowners really kind of want the same thing. So additional survey data and advisory council feedback really reinforced that leading with comfort and health was one of the most motivating paths forward. For example, low-income homeowners told us that they were interested in upgrades that improved their family's health. Comfort, safety, and cooling for hot summers was consistently cited as one of the top benefits. So as we're looking to roll out this campaign and seasonality, those are some of the insights that we'll be working off of. And finally, we wanted to pressure test against our most vulnerable populations. That was really important to us to make sure that we were being inclusive. So We looked at some messaging, but we also wanted to show them some visuals. So as you're looking at the campaign rolling out, we needed to make sure that there was visuals and images of real, relatable homes and families, not luxury cabins or these abstract, like modern condos. Like, we really want to make sure that people can see themselves in this brand, so they feel like this program is actually for them. So for the low income, while cost is going to be the top motivator, and we can offset that obviously with our rebates and benefit message, comfort and the ability to add an air conditioning to their home was really a close second and third. So with all of this research and message testing in mind, we're building out kind of your full brand strategy that will guide all of our mission and visions. And I'm gonna start with mission. So to articulate your mission, more on your name later, which some of you already know, but we really needed to break it into very digestible pieces that you could all, say why did we choose these words. So NewCo provides home and building owners. Those are our audiences, home and building owners, right? With a trusted path to healthier, safer comfort. Those are the benefits that we're offering through right-sized heat pumps, expert advising, vetted installers, and rebate supports. Those are what our program is offering. So our brand vision is that will kind of guide all of your decarbonization team, both from a marketing perspective and also connecting your workforce and policy, is this idea that we are, sorry, my thing's going crazy here. We're powering better homes, stronger communities, and quality jobs for Colorado's clean energy future. So it's not just about marketing. It's a strategic tool to kind of accelerate the adoption, reinforce emissions, and improve the quality of life that DRCOG stands for. It's built on evidence shaped by our community and voices, and designed to position you as Colorado's trusted leader in home comfort and energy. So that is sort of the brand strategy and that platform and that foundation that we're building. And Carol's going to talk you through the name and logo development.
Yes, so we took all of the research and mission vision and strategic work that Camille just walked you through into consideration as we started developing options for the program's name and logo. Internally, next slide, please. Internally, we started with over 75 names, which is bananas. We always start with a lot, but we really explored a lot of different directions. And as a team, we narrowed it down to about 17 for our first presentation to Robert, Chris, and team. They identified their top 3, and then we had another round in which we presented 12 new options. The final 3 were put into testing amongst both in-person and online focus groups. We needed to gauge people's perceptions of the different names, what those names evoked, how they made them feel. And the final name rose to the top, and we are excited to announce Power Ahead Colorado. Power obviously nods at electrification. Ahead feels future-facing, evokes movement, progress, and Colorado obviously localizes us, which is important, as Camille said earlier. We also went through many options for a tagline for the program, and we landed on cleaner heat, cooler air. So you can see on the next slide how that kind of breaks down, and it hits on key components of the program and heat pumps that we want to emphasize. Things like air quality, health and safety, calm, modern, simple, and universal. As I said earlier, we vetted these extensively with our audience, and of 180 homeowners in our region, 76% preferred the name Power Ahead Colorado, and 77% found the name to be meaningful. So those are pretty great stats. Some of the comments from our focus groups, it makes you feel like it's something you want to be a part of. It gets the point of energy conservation across. It feels forward-facing. The tagline is meaningful, and it speaks to more value from your energy. So all things that we want to convey. So great news that the name is doing that. So once we had a final name, we moved into the visual representation of the brand. We again started with a lot of options. Typically, we present maybe 5 in the first round, but our team was really inspired and we explored, again, quite a few different directions. So we started with over 25 options internally, presented about 16 to Robert and Chris and team. they narrowed those down again, which we refined, and I'm excited to share the final version. Again, that arrow kind of leans into the forward motion, emphasizing future, powering ahead. And then there's a subtle nod to the sea and the Colorado flag, again, to bring it back to Colorado. The gradient represents movement. It has a nice feeling of dimensionality. So this logo is doing a lot of heavy lifting for us, which is great. And then the next slide is just another colorway. When it came to defining the color palette for the brand, we started with the DRCOG colors because we wanted Powerhead Colorado to clearly have its own identity, but also draw some inspiration and consistency from the DRCOG brand. So this is the full DRCOG brand color palette. And then the next slide shows these are the Powerhead Colorado colors, so pulled directly from that overall color palette. We're leaning into cool tones, but ensuring there's still warmth. I'm sure you all know the climate space and energy space is heavy with greens and blues, so we didn't want to deviate too far away from that from a recognition perspective, but we're using some unexpected shades so that we stand out. We also, as Chris said, want to share a sneak peek at the very initial mock-ups of what the consumer campaign will look like. These are just comps, which means the images and the copy aren't necessarily final, but directionally, this is where we're headed. This would be a billboard. You'll note that we're using illustration, which allows us to play with the scenes a bit. We can be a little bit more imaginative and whimsical. We're definitely going to develop a series of images to use across a variety of tactics so that we can show different landscapes, as Camille was saying, so that our audience can really feel like they see themselves in them. Some are maybe going to be more city focused, some more mountain focused, as well as showing a variety of different styles of homes. So we're representative of all of our audiences. And then next is how a bus shelter might look. Emphasis on might, not final. So we've done a ton of work over the last 5 months, working very closely with Robert and Chris and their team, which has been wonderful. And we have a lot ahead of us. So we're going to continue to test and review the creative concept to ensure we're hitting the mark with messaging and tone. We will build upon our reasons to believe to connect with our consumers emotionally, because we know that emotional connection is really important. We're developing the paid and earned media strategies, so we ensure our message is being heard by our audiences, which is obviously the most important thing. And of course, refining the creative campaign and getting into production, which will get us to the campaign launch in January 2026. There you have it. Five months worth of work narrowed down to 20 minutes.
18. It was 18 minutes.
18.
No,
Oh,
with Chris's
18.
intro to 21. Anyone have questions for us? We're happy to. I mean, I could talk the data all day, so.
Looks like Melody has her hand raised. Melody?
Hi, can you hear me okay? I just had a question about the DRCOG at the bottom of that. To me, like that isn't your normal logo, and it doesn't stand out as much to know that it's DRCOG, because like you said, there is that impact of it being DRCOG. Like, right, a program of DRCOG. I think people would miss that in my mind. I mean, I know you've decided on all this already, but that's just my 2 cents, because DRCOG's been around for so long. I'm curious why you didn't want to bring more emphasis to that. And maybe you mentioned that I missed that.
We'll let Robert take that one. And then,
Sure.
and then
Well,
I'll round it out.
I'll just start by saying these are very draft. We're still kind of figuring out how to do that. I think there are different audiences where we do want to emphasize DRCOG more versus kind of having this brand stand alone on its own a little bit more. And it's very similar to the way we kind of represent DRCOG in our Way to Go program, which is the kind of our regional transportation demand management program. Way to Go kind of is its own brand, and that kind of text that's used there is directly from the way that Way to Go puts a program of DRCOG underneath it. But it's a point well taken, Melody, and I think depending on the audience, we will emphasize that DRCOG part more versus less, so we'll have lots of options to play with.
I think, Robert, the only thing I'll add from a research perspective, especially when you're looking at our homeowner audience, they're not actually familiar with either the acronym or the Department of Council of Regional Governments. So we also just wanted to make sure that this felt like it could stand on its own, like Excel's heat pump program and stuff right now too. So to his point, the messaging hierarchy of how we're talking about it, but for workforce and contractors, that'll be more important to emphasize the regional DRCOG program.
Thanks for that great question. Any other questions? Adam.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick comment. I just wanted to mention that on the billboard, I know this is just a draft, but this appears to be somebody standing on a high rise. And just thinking from income qualified populations, taking a look at that, it has a little bit of a not for me feel to it in the way that they're up very high looking over the rest of the city. Just wanted to throw that out there. Again, I know it's a draft. Just wanted to give you my initial reaction though.
Yes, thanks for that. And you're exactly correct. It's a draft. This may end up being one of a collection, but again, we're going to do our hardest to make sure everyone feels like they see themselves or a representation of their neighborhood within the context of the larger campaign.
And Adam, the other thing I'll add too is that's where the illustration style became really impactful. We had a lot of different versions of concepts that we showed people, but the illustration lent themselves into an accessible way that felt really natural as opposed to performative. That tested really well. So we're trying to be very inclusive and sensitive of like how people want to see themselves in a very accessible, authentic way.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks, Adam. Jeff?
Thanks. Could you talk a little bit more kind of on the testing pool and the demographics and a little more detail about that group? Thanks.
I will take that. Let me show, we'll go back to the research slide. Maybe. So we did 3 different kind of focus groups here, which were kind of our 12 one-on-one individual stakeholders. And then we've done 3 different versions of community advisory committees, and those are made up of low-income homeowners across the DRCOG region. And then we did a swath of 180 DRCOG region anyone who owned a home. And then on top of that, we talked to workforce and contractors. So we've really tried to hit, both an internal stakeholder perspective from a policy point of view, our low income which is really these community advisory committees, and the CACs. We feel all of our research really kind of started with them, and then it was kind of vetted if they were liking things that we were going to make sure that it also felt resonant to the more general kind of homeowner audience. And then how did workforce and contractors fit in with that? So we have around, a sample size of say 250 people that really kind of were our priority audiences and markets that we've kind of vetted multiple rounds of not only the positioning, but also just like baseline questions of what is their understanding around heat pumps? How do they feel about climate change, or what is important to them and their families when we're talking about electrifications, all the way through here's a plethora of names, let's talk about that, and then here is what the creatives and logos look like. So we have talked to these groups several different times throughout this entire 4-month process. Did that answer your question?
I was wondering more about the demographics in terms of specific, it says, DRCOG region, if there's a density in Denver or if it's more spread out through the region, housing types, if it's single family homes or townhomes, that type of thing, and then also age and race. Thank you.
Jeff, let me get back to you. We have a breakdown of all of those. I don't remember. And we tried really hard to have everything from or like 20-ish. And then we did want to, for the CAC, we actually recruited some aging populations as well to make sure that we were getting our more senior population when we talked about low income or vulnerable. So we tried to kind of cover the gamut. I know that there was Denver based, but then we also went to Front Range as well. And from a demographic perspective, we tried really hard to make sure that we were getting some of our Latino population, BIPOC, and both single and multi-family homeowners. It was really important to us, though, a homeowner has to be able to really own their home to make the decision for a heat pump. But there was some talk, I believe, in apartments as well. So, but we can get you that full breakdown of exactly kind of what that demographic looked like.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sure.
Great
Chris,
question.
Robert, do you have anything to add on that?
No, yeah, I know it's in the remesh research findings, so we could share that out.
Other thoughts, questions, curiosities?
Maybe I can wrap up really quick, Susie, if you're okay with that. Just to mention that, first of all, I think we have been called the Regional Building Decarbonization Technical Committee for a long time, but that is a mouthful, and we're not big fans of it. Now that we have a brand, if you're all okay with it, we're proposing that we rename this committee itself the Powerhead Colorado Technical Committee. I think that's a lot cleaner and really represents our brand. So excited about that. And just to mention that this presentation has now been seen by our board. It's been mentioned to the board for a month or so, and then they got the same presentation at the beginning of this month. So we are kind of officially moving forward with this brand. You can kind of refer to the program that way. There's no press releases or anything that's coming later this year as we kind of roll out the website and beyond. But this is who we are now, and we're super excited about it.
It's a major upgrade from the DRCOG Technical Decarbonization Committee. So thank you. Thanks for all this hard work. The logo is very stunning in terms of just a climate logo, I will say. Just very powerful colors, and I love the usage of the Colorado, and just it looks fantastic. I think it'll take a minute for all of us to kind of just galvanize around it, and then it'll be pretty powerful once we see it everywhere. So thank you so much for all that hard work. Are there any other questions or comments for this section of the agenda? Okay, if not, I'm going to pass it to Robert to discuss the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan with DRCOG. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Susie. And I know you all are mostly here for our building program, but you're going to get some extra credit today just to kind of fill you in on where we're with the region's first kind of comprehensive climate action plan. I know many of you on this call have been involved with this along the way, and I thank you for all your support throughout. The comprehensive or the priority comprehensive climate action plan. Geez, sorry. Priority Climate Action Plan was kind of the bedrock foundation of us getting this implementation grant, and really was a lot of hard work compressed into 6 months to get the implementation grant going. Since then, we've been working hard on the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, which kind of expanded to look at all sectors, not just kind of a focus selection, and identify some additional measures. So excited to share what's coming up with this plan. And it's looking for our board to adopt it in November. So just a quick reminder, as I mentioned, we were awarded a $1 million planning grant in 2023. That led to us hiring Medi Nesbitt, who is hired full-time for 4 years for the grant. She's on medical leave right now, but will be back shortly to kind of help with the implementation. And then we also hired Lotus Sustainability as the consultant to do the technical work. The planning area is a little bit different than DRCOG. DRCOG's the black outlined area on this map. We were required to do this planning work for the metropolitan statistical area, which oddly includes Elbert and Park, but not Boulder and Weld. So we did the planning work for the entire blue area. Boulder and Weld opted to take part in the planning process, thankfully. And we also did additional work for Park and Albert. So all of our numbers, kind of emission inventory things, include Park and Albert and the entire area within blue. So there's 3 products required for this grant. The first was that priority climate action plan that was submitted back in April and included primarily a focus on buildings and a little bit on transportation. The comprehensive climate action plan will be due on December 1st. That's why we're looking for board adoption in November so we can submit it to EPA. And then the kind of last deliverable of the project is just a status report 2 years later. So we will have a full-time staff person, Maddie, kind of helping and around just regionally with kind of implementing sustainability and climate pollution reduction measures over the next 2 years, which is a really exciting opportunity. So what is this thing? You know, the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan does address all sectors, at least briefly. As an MPO or a COG, we don't have that much authority over some of these sectors, but we included kind of them in the inventory and what's going on in those spaces. It included our inventory, which we did not update for the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan. We may look at updating that in a year or two. We kind of analyzed the new strategies and measures, especially that DRCOG specifically could activate within our space, and additional public and stakeholder engagement. We evaluated workforce, labor, and economic impacts, and then tried to identify funding. Unfortunately, we did identify $200 million of funding for building decarbonization, but other sectors have yet to be identified. So we've did a lot of public and stakeholder engagement over the last 2 years. A lot of that was kind of focused on the PCAP portion of this program. However, we did a couple additional virtual public meetings and really focused on waste more than we had in the past for the PCAP, because that was a sector that a lot of our stakeholders identified as being very valuable to them. So we formed a waste working group to identify some new measures there, obviously coordinating with our partners in local government, the state as well. Just a reminder of where our inventory was. So again, this is end use, greenhouse gas emissions, 52% buildings overall, and transportation is 34%. Waste and wastewater treatment are less than 1%, however, still kind of an important space that local governments have can impact. As part of the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan that was not in the Priority Climate Action Plan, we are required to identify greenhouse gas reduction targets. And we are proposing, with support of our stakeholders, to kind of just match the state of Colorado's existing reduction targets. You know, we really do see them as key partners, and DRCOG just can play the role that we can to support their very aggressive greenhouse gas reduction targets. So that's a 65% reduction by 2035 and net zero by 2050. And this is the board will be adopting this, but this is very much like our MetroVision plan that DRCOG has. It is a voluntary interconnected set of strategies. You know, this is going to kind of be a menu and resource of options for our local governments who can do a lot of the lifting, and DRCOG can really play the role that they do that supports our local governments along the way. Yeah, like I said, the measures that we're about to talk about really did focus on areas that DRCOG can impact and that DRCOG can actually implement. So, you know, if in terms of something like adopting a new policy, DRCOG doesn't really have police powers, right? So we couldn't really focus on that. However, we could support policy implementation like we're doing with our building policy collaborative and make it easier for locals and provide a space for collaboration. So here are the measures in our plan. So the measures are things that directly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we included a lot about supportive measures such as workforce development, as well as comms and marketing, like you just heard in the previous presentation. Those don't directly decrease greenhouse gas emissions, but they're kind of supportive measures. So we did not add any new measures within building sector. We really felt like we had covered that pretty comprehensively in the Priority Climate Action Plan. And that obviously, as I mentioned, created the foundation for the Decarbonized DRCOG grant and the ongoing implementation. So those measures, we did kind of shuffle them around a little bit to kind of more closely match the actual implementation work that's going. So 4 measures that you'll see just align very directly with the actual work that is being done here now at DRCOG, and that is low-income decarbonization. That's being implemented through $46 million of our program. Energy advising, that's about $17 million of, as you know, energy advising and supporting homeowners and building owners through their transition. Rebates and incentives, $43 million of rebates and incentives to lower the cost of electric appliances. And then the building policy collaborative, that's by far our highest emission reduction sector there. That's supporting our local governments through policy development, both financially as well as through peer-to-peer networks. Transportation, we had 2 measures included in the PCAP. It was kind of projects that DRCOG was involved with already, expansion of the regional bus rapid transit network, and that work is ongoing, and we're really hoping to make headways in there. We have really aggressive goals to support the state and RTD and our local governments to get those corridors, those 5 or 6 identified corridors up and running in an aggressive timeline. Originally, the timeline was 2030, but that timeline that is rapidly approaching. But really excited to see the first kind of stations being propped up on Colfax right now within our region. They look really super cool, as well as kind of increasing the amount of funding we have for active transportation through DRCOG's Transportation Improvement Program and other funding mechanisms. We also added 2 new measures. So the first measure is to expand upon our active transportation demand management efforts here. And Melody, you can see that there's the Way to Go program and kind of the reference to how we reference it there with the program of DRCOG underneath it. But DRCOG also supports other TDM partners, and we do feel like this is a really important work to basically just reduce the amount that people drive alone in this region. So expanding DRCOG's role there, increasing funding to TDM efforts, as well as the opportunity to kind of support clean transportation infrastructure. DRCOG could play a role in kind of assisting identifying where the needs for EV charging are within the region, as well as technical support for things like zoning and siting and coordination with our utilities. And even more aspirationally, there could be something like bulk purchasing of charging equipment that could be coordinated and sold to local governments. Moving on to waste and wastewater treatment, as I mentioned, about 1% of the regional emissions, and the majority of that is from landfill waste. A lot of that's up in Weld County. But our waste diversion rate in Colorado is 16%, really well below the national average. So a lot of work to be done here in waste. And we have 4 new measures. I'm going to not go into all the details of them, but really these measures do focus on kind of continuing regional collaboration. As I mentioned, we kind of stood up a waste working group. That was a really involved and passionate group that really does see the opportunity for regional collaboration there and wants to continue that work. So that could be a waste planning collaborative that meets quarterly or more to kind of basically get people in the same room and figure out how we can reduce emissions and improve those processes. That could lead to kind of policy recommendations to develop model ordinances and policies to reduce waste. It also makes sense to kind of take regional waste education campaigns regionally rather than at the local level to, again, kind of pool forces like we are doing with our kind of heat pump education and pool forces and have a regional public education engagement. And then work on public-private partnerships for circularity. So DRCOG could be a resource hub for waste-related incentives and partnerships. So those 4 new measures were identified by our waste working group and then vetted into public meetings. So excited to add those to the plan. Also in the plan, there's an overview of the remaining sectors. So we don't get into power generation. Again, we don't feel like DRCOG has much of a role to play there aside from supporting state efforts. Same with working lands, natural lands. It's kind of a smaller amount of the DRCOG's emissions. We did a benefits analysis to evaluate how those measures would impact both other pollutants, such as criteria pollutants, ozone, precursors, et cetera, as well as the other benefits that come about when we implement those such as quality of life and improved air quality indoor and outdoor. And then as well as how these measures would affect marginalized communities. We're really excited about the graphic design. Lotus hired on a subcontractor we've been working closely with on the graphic design over the last several months, and we just got our 95% draft last week. So I'm just going to kind of give you a tease of how it's looking. These are not the final product, but we really liked this kind of concept of a little bit retro but future forward, navigating our shared future. So you'll kind of see these grid lines from a map and kind of this retro feel throughout, as well as, again, kind of referencing DRCOG's core colors. There's what's kind of a title page would look like. There's what the introductions or the chapter headers look like. You can see a table there. We're going to have lots of kind of these dashboard things so that we recognize that people will not all want to read through all the text. So a lot of easy to navigate dashboards and all that, and some pretty cool images that we're working on as well. So what is next for this plan? The full plan will be complete by, I think, October 22nd is our drop dead deadline. We are happy to share out kind of the final draft with you all. There'll be public comment and hopefully board adoption at the November 5th DRCOG board special meeting. And then, as I mentioned, the funding for the full-time staff, the contract with Lotus basically ends in December, but the staff, Maddie Nesbitt, will continue for 2 years. And so our concept is to, after adoption of the plan, hopefully in November, we can kind of reconvene afterwards with our stakeholders and evaluate what is the best kind of use of that resource to both support the sustainability work and climate pollution reduction work in the region. So that could really look like Maddie organizing those waste working groups. There's obviously plenty of work to be done on the building side too, so she could play kind of a utility role there as well as we see needs. And really, we have felt for a long time, I know, been working closely with many of you over the years, and they form naturally the need for regionalism in the climate pollution reduction and sustainability spaces. I know there's various avenues that's already happening, but we would like to seize the opportunities that this program and has presented to us to really solidify DRCOG as a role player in the sustainability space in this region. Obviously, that will happen through the Powerhead Colorado work, but there's obviously other places that could happen as well. So that is what's next, and that is the presentation. So thank you. I know this may not have been exactly what you signed up for, but really appreciate you sitting through that and your thoughts and your participation in the planning work so far. So I'll happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Robert. I actually have a question for you. You touched on it very briefly, but could you kindly remind us the role of DRCOG in the statewide policy? Is it more on the kind of support side, or do you kind of stay away from that area?
Yeah, so Flo could actually probably talk to. Well, Flo, why don't I turn it over to you so I can give you so I don't have to talk anymore.
Thanks, and I'm having difficulty with my camera this morning, so I'm off camera. Sorry about that. DRCOG does play a role in the development of statewide policy, but it's at the legislative level. And so it's like we serve the role of advocate in a lot of areas, including the aging concept, and we often do a lot of things on a statewide basis because most of the other area agencies on aging are really small and don't have the capacity that our AAA does. So that's one area. Transportation is another area where we're relatively active in a policy development, but our board annually adopts a policy guide, and which informs all of the DRCOG staff what elements of policy that the board wants us to maintain a strong focus on and play at both the state level and the federal level. So in that development, there is that. In addition, DRCOG is one of 14 regional entities around the state of Colorado, And there is a statewide organization called CARO, the Colorado Association of Regional Organizations. And that is a comprehensive membership of all of those 14 different regions. Most regions are both an economic development district and a COG. Some are just COGs and some are just DDDs, but that's uncommon. And DRCOG is actually in the process of becoming designated as an economic development district, along with the other regions in the state. So from an economic development perspective, the conversation about workforce development, a lot of the other aspects of comprehensive community development is really discussed at the CARO table. So that's the organization that oftentimes talks about a lot of strategy and a lot of policy work. But because DRCOG is so large and has the capacity, we oftentimes end up being the entity that carries the water for all of the other regional organizations and CARO as well. So that's DRCOG's role.
Thank you, Flo. The reason I was asking the question is I was curious about the success of this climate action plan. And, a lot of communities have finally realized that state legislation and policy and action at the PUC is really, really helpful for regional deployment of our local climate action plans. So I was just curious if you think that DRCOG would be more active in the future so that the climate action plan that Robert just gracefully went through, it would be very successful for the region.
Well, so here's the interesting factor is that climate action is not an issue for most of the state, but it is for the Front Range, and that includes all the way from Fort Collins all the way down to Colorado Springs, and we know that the Pikes Peak area COG is a non-attainment region, as is DRCOG, as is North Front Range MPO, which is North Front Range MPO is Weld and Larimer counties. So those are the three regional entities that are most engaged in the conversation about greenhouse gas emissions and being non-attainment areas. Now, there are some other minor exceptions, and when you get into the mountain communities, especially those with Box Canyon phenomena, they can get air quality issues as well. But the interesting thing is a lot of the mountain communities addressed it long ago. And so while Summit County in the 1980s and 1990s had significant air pollution issues, that county kind of took the bull by the horns and addressed it and no longer has air quality challenges. Aspen, Pitkin County is pretty much the same way. Route, Steamboat Springs, quite similar. So there are pockets in the mountains, but they've been addressed decades ago.
I might add that I think hopefully the board saw this the comprehensive climate action plan last week, and I think it was well received. I was not around, unfortunately, but by adopting this next month, by DRCOG adopting plans, that kind of does become DRCOG's mission. So I would hope that between kind of the building space that we are now entering and our board is kind of coming to terms with the fact that they've taken on this massive project and that buildings are kind of one of their new priorities now, not just transportation and aging, that this plan also kind of does allow us to wade more deeply into kind of that climate space, as well as the PUC space. We're really obviously very interested in that PUC space now through this program.
Great. That's very good to hear. Well, good. If there are any questions or other comments, thanks for entertaining that one. I appreciate it, both Flo and Robert. Other questions? Well, kudos. The plan looks beautiful. Good work on that.
We're really excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, we are on to any other member comments or other matters. I'm going to open it up to the floor. I think I have one kind of large one, which we're probably all curious about how government shutdown might impact your work and if it does or does not. Obviously, I'm assuming no, since we're all here and we're all engaged. So we'll just keep on keeping on. But I did have a curiosity about that.
No, good question. I probably should have addressed that. But yeah, no, so our funding reimbursement process is still working. You know, eventually, depending on how long this might drag on, obviously at certain points we need interaction with our EPA project officer. We need them to approve our kind of quality assurance programs and things like that. And that could create backups there. So eventually, again, depending how long this drags on, it could cause some delays at some point. But for now, we are still able to withdraw and get reimbursed, and we are all working and chugging along.
That's fantastic to hear. That's what I assumed. No news is good news. Fantastic. Any other member comments? I'm opening it up for anything else that we want to discuss today. Okay. Oh, Sean, yay, we want to hear from you.
Hey, sorry, I've been mildly distracted today. I apologize, but I wanted to say I really support the branding piece. It looks really good. Excited to see more of it out there. I think they've hit really great key points. So looking forward to seeing that roll out.
Thanks, Sean. We appreciate the support. Anything else? Okay, just another friendly reminder. We'll see you in person on November 4th. And this meeting is adjourned. Please enjoy this gorgeous October day, everybody. Thank you so much, DRCOG team.
Thanks all.
Take care.